My name's Fuzz Townshend. I currently present Car SOS on National Geographic, More 4, Channel 4. I also play the drums for Bentley Rhythm Ace and The Beat, and I write for Classic Car Weekly and freelance, across the titles. And also I have a car restoration shop, which we're sitting in right now. People often ask me, how do you get the name Fuzz? Well, I got called Fuzz because my fuzzy hair. A couple of girls used to come out and stroke my hair going, oh, it's all fuzzy. I quite like the attention, to be honest. I grew up in a place called Sutton Coldfield and I was a foster kid. I grew up with foster parents during the week and I used to see my mum at the weekends. My mum was a dwarf, or a person of restricted growth, so she was only 4'2". But she got me into drumming in a kind of roundabout way via cars. She won a Vauxhall Chevette in a newspaper competition, a national newspaper, and so she'd never learned to drive with her condition. She'd never really bothered with it. And so she took the cash option instead, which was 1,300 quid. And she said, you can have a treat. And so I had a treat. So I started playing my first gigs when I was 12, although I only actually made my first money when I was 13. So 1977 started gigging. And so I've been playing ever since, really. I left school when I was 15 years old. I had a job lined up with the West Midlands Passenger Transport Executive because I absolutely love buses. They are really my first love, I suppose, when it comes down to vehicles. Got my dream job, started fixing buses, and age 16, what better job for a guy like me? The first car I ever bought with my own money, well, in fact with anybody's money actually, was a Ford Anglia. It was a 1960 Anglia and it had the registration number 803 BOL. I bought it for 25 quid. I was still 15 at the time, and it just about ran. And I started poking around and found that it was terrifically rusty. So after a couple of little drives up and down the garden, it conked out, just went bang, and that was the end of that. This, well, the body of it is a 1939 standard Flying 9, and it's been placed on a TVR Chimera chassis. The idea is make a bit of a hot rod, and actually it really fits really well. It's going to be a monster of a thing. So here we've got a customer's Singer Gazelle, nice little car. That's in for a little light recommission. Above it there's a Volvo Amazon, 2-door, very desirable car. It's a late one, and that is just going to be put back on the road before they actually do anything more with the bodywork. As I've said before, my first love was buses, and one of my favourite buses, in fact just about the last of them, was coming out of service in 1981, and this is the year after I'd actually started my apprenticeship. So myself and a mate, we decided we were going to get hold of this bus. We ended up paying £823.40, including VAT and a set of slave tyres for a 1968 Daimler Fleetline with a Gardner 6 LX engine. I had this Fiesta for a few months, and my mate bought this old Series 1 Land Rover, a 1950 Land Rover. And we had such a laugh in that car, just going around the country lanes. I was well jealous, and I just thought, I've got to get one of these. And he was really jealous of my Fiesta, so we came up with a deal. I'll have the Land Rover, he has the Fiesta. He has to give me a bung of a few hundred quid or something like that, about 1,100 quid. But yeah, I ended up with 1,100 quid and this Series 1 Land Rover. And of course, it was a complete crock. You know, I'd been sold a pup, but I loved it. And so over the years, I kept it for 11 years. And over the years, I gradually rebuilt it, rebuilt the bulkheads, got everything working as it should. But then I'd joined a band called Pop Will Eat Itself, and we were just about to go recording. And I had to get my drum kit down to the recording studio, which was near to Hastings, but I hadn't left myself enough time. So I bodged the engine together, and I mean terribly. So I got down to Hastings okay, and I will add, actually, on my way down to Hastings, the car used more oil than it did petrol. I used 8 gallons of oil to get down there. It was pouring out of the rear crank seal. It was disgraceful, and I was by this time fully qualified. but I'd cut every corner. What a complete idiot. I'd been playing semi-professionally when I was at school, and I'd made little bits of money here and there. I then started graduating to bands that were playing nightclubs, so by the time I was 15, 16, I was playing clubs in and around Birmingham. I went on to play college gigs and stuff like that, so I was doing that 16, 17. Then other bands asked me to play, and eventually, I'm still working on the buses at this time, and I'm fully qualified. And I thought, if I'm going to make something of this, I'm going to have to do it full time. So I borrowed a bit of money off my long-suffering foster mum and started up Cake Records and Music. And then I got picked up by a much bigger act, a band called General Public, and a chap called Ranking Roger, who at that time used to be in The Beat. But as soon as I joined, of course, what happens then? The two singers fall out. So I'm left in Ranking Roger's band, and suddenly, from playing in front of 200 people, in the bands that I've been used to playing with, I'm suddenly playing in front of 15, 20,000 people over on the west coast of the States, and life's pretty good. And then, of course, all good things come to an end. So I find myself in 1989, back in Birmingham, nothing's happening, no band anymore, and I'm skint. So what do? Went back to Dudley Bus Garage, tapped on the door. Excuse me, have you got any jobs going? Next week, I was back in the same old job, same clock card number, same locker, bang, I'm fixing Daimler Fleet Lines again. It's like, how did that happen? And I decided there and then I was going to get my way out of that as soon as I possibly can. About 2 or 3 months later, Bobby Bird, he came to me, he said, look, we've got this thing, got 3 months pay for you, do you want to do it? I was in 3 months straight. I was straight out of the buses like a rat up a pipe. I was busking down in London with a couple of guys, and we got quite a good reputation for ourselves. We used to busk around Camden Lock and places like that. And one of the people who came to see us regularly and always chatted with us was a woman we got to know as Liz. And then later on we found out that she was Elizabeth Emmanuel. And so she got us playing at her parties. We were playing at this one party down in her basement, and people started arriving and everything like that, and in walks George Harrison from the Beatles. And this is just like, it's a dream come true to me, really. He said, I'm going to the wine cellar, has she given you any wine? And I was like, no. He took me into the cellar, I followed him in, and he's going, that's a nice one, have that, and basically he gave us a few bottles of Liz Emmanuel's wine for us to stick in our bags to take home with us. So I actually went wine stealing with George Harrison in Elizabeth Emmanuel's cellar. This is my 1968 former Walsall Corporation Daimler Fleet Line. It needs loads and loads of work, but actually it does run and it drives, so that's pretty good. Come and take a look at the engine. Now that is what I call an engine. That is a 10.45 litre Gardner 6LX engine, developing a measly 150 brake horsepower, but it does it all with loads and loads of grunt at the bottom end, and it's enough to propel about 75, 76 people in relative comfort. And I worked on this bus when I was an apprentice, and I've got it now. It's going back in the workshop very shortly, and I'll be getting to grips with its restoration. But it's a pretty good old tub anyway. So in 1991, I was approached. I was standing in a pub in Moseley. I was approached by Pop Elite itself. One of them came up to me and said, would you like to be in our band? And I went, too right I would. And it happened just on the day that my previous 3-month contract actually ended. And before too long, I was writing with them and doing all the recording and stuff. So suddenly I was a full member, and that kind of carried on for the next 5 years or so. So in my time, I've had a sort of, I don't know, a rambling selection of cars. Started off with my Ford Anglia, had the Fiesta Mark 1, then of course went to my first Land Rover. But in between I've had all kinds of other things, like a couple of Austin Gypsies, which are like a Land Rover, but with massive amounts of built-in rust. Show it the atmosphere and it just falls to pieces. Brilliant idea. They've got rubber suspension, great and all that, but they just don't hold together. I had a Daimler Dart as well as a daily driver, Rover P495, which you know, I used in various videos and stuff like that. Austin 1100 with the, of course, with the heel board rotting away, so that had to be done. Triumph Herald, Vitesse, Austin A40, which I fuel injected, just loads and loads of stuff that I've driven around in. But the main thing is that I love driving around using classic cars as my daily driver. I just can't do that in classics. I'd have to have a massive fleet of them to be able to keep on top of them to do it. So after Pop Will Eat Itself came to an end, twiddled my thumbs for a bit and started writing a bit of solo stuff. But at the same time, one of my old hoppos from the Poppies, Richard, he started a band with another mate called Mike, and it was called Bentley Rhythm Ace. So then ensued about 3.5 years of living what I can only describe as living in the middle of a cartoon. It was just absolute, utter mayhem for 3.5 years, and I think I'd find it hard to top that as far as touring bands are concerned. Yeah, I can't really tell you what went on, but it was all nuts. So after my solo stuff finished, suddenly I found myself as a college lecturer doing music practice, music tech, and suddenly I was kind of out of the front line of music. You know, I was in my early 40s, and I didn't really know what was going to come next. Suddenly, I found myself in a very small room of my house reading an advert in Practical Classics magazine, and they said they're looking for a staff writer, and I cheekily thought I could probably do that. I can write an email anyway. So I lied to them and said that I'd had loads of experience, and because the editor liked the bands that I'd been in, I got an interview straight away. Bang! A week later, I'm a staff writer on Practical Classics. Later on, not very much later, they made me the technical editor of the magazine, so I was responsible for a third of the content of a third of the magazine. And then I found this Jensen 541R sitting in a barn in Lincolnshire, chicken crap all over it and everything like that. And I thought, there's something I can put in the magazine. So I bought the car, which really has become, I don't know, the love of my life, really. I've still got it. Here we have it, my beautiful Jensen 541R from 1959. I've had this car for 7 years now, and it's only now just getting to the paint process. I've got a little way to go yet, but 2 or 3 weeks time it's going to be painted. But so far the chassis all been done, the engine's been rebuilt, gearbox, overdrive, rear axle, front axle. Everything has been done on this car. I just can't wait to actually drive it. It's just going to be an absolutely stonking car. When I get to go home in that, I will have a smile that goes all the way around here and over the top. We decided to buy a car each, and it had to be under 200 quid, on the road for under 200 quid with an MOT, and we were going to drive each one to the Nürburgring and pound them around there and see who got back. As it happened, all the cars were pretty good. I got a Toyota Supra 3-litre non-turbo. I actually overspent, but I got a mate to sponsor me, put all stickers over all over my car, and so that way I actually kept my actual spend down under 200 quid. It's cheating really, but there's a bit of a theme going on in my life there. I've been tech editor of Practical Classics for a few years, and I decided that really I ought to know about the industry from the other side of the fence really. So I decided I'm going to start up a workshop. It just so happened a mate of mine had decided that he wanted to do that as well, so we clubbed together and we started Westgate Classics. I was really green, and it was massively hard work for the first couple of years, and I made absolutely tons of mistakes. I was working on this guy's Triumph Vitesse once, and really what I was doing was boxing it all back together. He'd decided that he couldn't do it, and I kept getting called off it to do other things, and I made a real dog's breakfast of it. And I drove it out of the workshop, and I was just driving it up to the MOT station, and I was thinking, this feels a bit vague. There were 1 or 2 bits that were loose. I had to really limp it back. It was a bad thing, but I really learned from that to absolutely go through everything when you're looking at a car that somebody's put together slightly, you know, and you're taking it over. Go through absolutely everything. Don't take it for granted that everything has been done or anything has been done. Start from the start. Probably the worst customer service moment that I've ever had was when I had a guy, a lovely Lotus. You know, he rang me up beforehand and said, you know, will it be ready? Yes, sir. Yes, it will be ready. And I said to the painter, yeah, is it going to be ready? Yep, absolutely no problems. Up comes the guy, I pick him up from the station, take him to the workshop. He takes a look at his car, starts looking around it. He goes, oh, hold on, they haven't painted that bit. And wait a minute, that's a different colour to that. This car was, I don't know, a zillion different shades of orange. It was utterly horrendous. What a complete nightmare. I had to get rid of that painter, unfortunately, but I was so embarrassed. I had to then drive the guy all the way back to his house while apologising to him all the way. It was probably the most uncomfortable moment of my life. And if he's out there, I'm so sorry about it. When I was working on Practical Classics, I thought I was going to be working with the absolute cream of motoring engineering, but actually they were just car enthusiasts and none of them knew anything about spannering. And one of the guys had fitted in his W123 Mercedes a 5-litre V8 engine. And I got this phone call from a very tearful journalist one night going, my car's just made a terribly expensive noise and it's broken down, it's at the side of the road, can you help? I got to the car, sat in it, switched it on, looked at the fuel gauge, it's down dead on zero. He goes, oh no, it's always dead on zero, you know, it's still got about 5 gallons in, you know, when it's there. I was like, okay, I've known cars like that. Tried starting it up, nothing. Of course, took the fuel line off, tried starting it, there's no fuel coming out. I said, go and get some petrol. Sure enough, started up. The expensive noise, I found out from him, just went like that. It was a metallic cough. That was an expensive noise. It meant that he had to fill up again because that thing drank petrol like there was no tomorrow. Back in 2011, I've lived in and around Bishop's Castle in Shropshire for a long time. And an old mate of mine, Miles Hunt, singer out of the Wonder Stuff, was also living in and around there. We bumped into each other in the pub this one day and he said, oh, my drummer's leaving. Do you fancy playing the drums for us? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. That'd be brilliant. So I started playing drums for the Wonder Stuff. In fact, I think virtually every band I've joined starts off with a meeting in a pub. While I was playing for the Wonder Stuff, I was rehearsing in a big room in my rambling old house in the country. And I got a phone call, missed the phone call because we were making a racket. So checked out the voicemail and it was this TV company saying, you know, we'd like you to call us back. Now, of course, I had Westgate Classics at the time and I just thought that this was going to be somebody ringing me up just to say, well, you know, we want you to do something for nothing. I call them back expecting to go, oh, okay, no, I'm not interested. And they said, we'd like to screen test for this new car show called Car SOS, or it might be called Car SOS. We've seen your videos that you've put onto YouTube and stuff. It's all the stuff that I did when I was on Practical Classics. We like what we see. Would you screen test for this new car show? And I said, yeah, of course. They came down, screen tested me with Tim Shaw. We got on like a house on fire. Not many people would. So I got the job and then they said, well, could we film it here? Because they liked the look of the place. And then they said, well, can you and the guys do it? And I was like, yes. My biggest nightmare that I've ever had, I think, when doing any jobs with Car SOS has been the Ford Sierra Cosworth. It was an utter nightmare. What happened was the production company wanted to get it tuned up on a rolling road. Got it up to the rolling road, did a bit of filming there, left the car there ready for them to bang on there and tune up. I'm walking in and one of the production team goes, oh, it's a nightmare what happened to the car, it getting smashed up. And I was like, yeah, sure. And he goes, has nobody told you? And I was like, and I just felt the blood drain from it. I was like, what? Tell me what? One of the youths from the rolling road place took the car out into the yard and T-boned a Mercedes with it. And I was just about to hit the, I was just about to go, the intake of breath was massive. In it was going, just about to hit the sky. And I felt a hand on my shoulder and it was the mother and father of the guy whose car it was. And I then had about 100 yards to explain to them that something terrible had happened to the car. I hadn't even seen it at this time. Happily though, the guys at the workshop had really pulled out the stops and done a 36-hour pulled it all back into shape, at least cosmetically, and made it look great, so it was good for the reveal again. It was a terrible moment, and I'm still really disappointed that it ever happened, but it was out of my hands. Over here we've got a couple of Ford consoles. We've got one that's painted and is just being fitted up. That's going to be a nice car by the time it's actually done. The other one will probably just be boxed together, made to run, and probably sold on by its owner. That's what they want to do. That little Fiat 500, please note, actual real bullet holes in here. Somebody's been using it for target practice, or maybe somebody's met their end in there. I don't want to know. So my former business partner wanted a bit of a quieter life. I wanted to expand. So another mate of mine, Dave Tassel, and I started up Toto Classics. Townshend, first bit of Townshend, Tassel, working title. It's stuck, so stuck with it now. And so we took on this. We're 6 months in, and we do Car SOS from here now. And yeah, it's all going pretty well now. It's good. Not only do I have Toto Classics, but I have another thing that I started up with another pal of mine, Lee Reynolds. It's called Classic Friendly, and the idea is a network of visible classic car friendly garages around the UK, where we have a certain standard, sort of service standard for all of the customers. Certain facilities, so people know that they can bring their cars, their classic cars, into a classic friendly garage and know that there are people in there who understand what it is they're looking at and what they're working on. We're growing at the moment and spreading around the country, and hopefully we'll have a massive network that can undertake all kinds of things, safety checks, buyers and sellers inspections, and and routine servicing, right through to full restoration on cars. Would I do anything differently? Yeah, I probably would actually. I'd go back to myself in about, the early 80s, and I'd say, go down to London, sell yourself as a drummer down there, because I probably could have done more. I thought sticking in Birmingham, being a big fish in a small pond, would be a good thing. I should have been a little tiddler in a massive pond. You've got to see this. This is really special.